Hello, thinkers.
How's everybody doing? We are here with the one and only David Coulthard. How are you?
I'm good. How did you know that my nickname was Wanker? Did you say Wanker?
We did.
Yes. How did
That's
you know?
your nickname?
Yeah, it's my nickname.
We start every show with that. We didn't realize that we were giving you a nice little shout out. Who gave you that nickname?
Anyone who's ever met me. No, it's not really my nickname.
Yeah, well, you're in the
nickname.
perfect place. You're on the Red Flags podcast for the second time, returning guests. We're thrilled to have you on. It's going to be a little bit of a different situation this time. We're going to be doing this thing that we're starting to do with former F1 drivers, where we try to March Madness style figure out who your greatest of all time is. So we've set up a little board here. We've ranked them to the best of our abilities. There's going to be some mess ups, so give us some grace there. But we've got some drivers that you picked because we have some people in there that the numbers didn't work out. But so you've got 4 of your guys. We've got a bunch of WBC champions. We've got a bunch of greats here. So
You're not in there, but if it was the best jawline in history, I think you and Weber would actually be in the final.
Yeah.
you ever duking it out in just blow for blow finals. But we're gonna start. Why don't we start at the corner nearest to you? We're gonna go matchup by matchup. We're gonna start with a guy that you've got a little bit of history with.
Well, okay. I mean, you're talking top left.
Top left.
Schumacher.
That's right. No, and Jones.
And Jones. Alan Jones. Yeah, absolutely. So Alan, he was sort of old school, wasn't he? He was kind of like...
He got two for Williams.
Yeah.
He got their 2 first championships.
Yeah, and he... I actually think Juan Pablo Montoya kind of popped out of the Alan Jones school of, I don't give a shit, I drive race cars.
Yeah.
And when I'm not driving race cars, I eat burgers, drink beer. Actually, I don't think Juan drinks, but anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
So what am I doing? I'm picking between Schumacher and Jones.
Yes.
So that's kind of easy, isn't it? You've got to go with Schumacher.
Yeah.
7, haven't you?
Yes, you got to go with Schumacher there. We're gonna go into these guys more as it goes on. We'll move right on to the next ranking here. We've got Raikkonen versus Jensen Button.
Mercedes, Ford.
2 very different personalities.
Yes.
One who speaks and the other one who doesn't. Keany and I were teammates for a couple of years, and he was either asleep in the back of the truck or driving very quickly. I would say Raikkonen was the more natural talent. I would say Jensen was the more professional talent. So I guess that's a bit like Jensen would fall into an Alain Prost kind of category in my mind.
Right.
And Kimi would fall into a sort of not just with the finish, but naturally just very talented, and he did just enough to tap into that.
Not able to
whereas Schumacher had the talent but worked like a dog.
Yeah.
So what is
This is you. What do you value? I think that what's interesting about this for us when talking to drivers is that it's kind of a Rorschach test for what they kind of value. So that's game time decision for you.
So I'm going to go with Jensen, but I don't want that to be misunderstood in that I don't really admire the speed that Kimi had. I don't kind of give a shit attitude, and getting that one title was more than deserving, I think.
Right.
Potentially could have done more. So, but I just think that JB is the more professional. I think he sort of sweated his asset.
Your book, in both your books, you always talk about the value of hard work.
Yeah.
My brother said before with you, in his book, he always talks about you got to work hard. You got eyes on the prize, and that's how you got where you ended up. Is hard work, and then you just land on Kimi Raikkonen. That guy didn't do any of the shit that I'm talking about, and somehow he ended
just
up
a great talent, just a super fast natural talent. So respect to that. And his son is coming up through the ranks and karting, so I would not be surprised to see Kimi back reluctantly in the paddock, but because probably his son will be in Formula 1.
Have you seen him since he's retired? Has he been? Okay.
I saw him in Monza this year. Turned up with the family, and he's moved to Italy. He's basically living there, so his son is at the track all the time and doing what you really need to do if you're trying to guiding. To really guide them through. You need to be on track all the time, which is financially not viable for the majority of people.
Right.
But
Kimi
Formula
Räikkönen
One's
can
never
figure it
been-
out.
Yeah, he can figure it out.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay,
Thanks, Ferrari.
Thank you, Ferrari.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next battle here. We've got Niki Lauda versus Jochen Rindt.
Okay, I'm going to go with Nicky because Jochen, although I know the family and I know of him through Jackie
Sandon.
Stewart, who I worked with as a young driver, I never met the man. I know he's very highly regarded, but Nicky I did meet, spent time with, a huge amount of respect for just what he overcame and his approach and his how grounded he was, considering how famous he was, because a lot of times famous people become a bit detached and a bit unapproachable, and when I first arrived in Formula One, I remember Nicky coming up to me and sticking his hand out and saying welcome to Formula One, and I'm like, oh my god, Nicky Lauda, just because I was a Grand Prix driver, but I spent the majority of my time as a fan, so I hadn't kind of grown into being a driver, so there's a massive amount of respect for you.
Well, like the hat kind of represented.
Yeah.
That was what was so, I think, special about the hat. I'm still the same guy.
Yeah, you guys got that vibe as well. You're very
13th already.
There you go.
We're just like Niki Lauda. Okay, so round one of the left side here at Donovan. Okay, let's go to the bottom here. You got your old teammates, Mika Hakkinen versus Nigel Mansell.
Very quick to that one. Mansell grew up watching him. Unbelievable doggedness and fighting spirit. I was his test driver. Then we shared the car in '94 after Ayrton passed away. With all of that respect, with some pure speed, I've got to go with Mika. But that's a really tough one in terms of two great champions.
Only a position up.
Nigel did it at 40. I think it was Peter Collins who was at Lotus back in the day. When Nigel left there, Peter Collins said that he could never win a race as long as he had a hold on the arse. And how wrong he was, because Nigel went on to win a lot of races. Not everyone's cup of tea. Very sort of single-minded and one approach to how he went about things. But
Was he tough to work with?
yeah, he was, because when he decided that's the way, that became a fact. There's opinions in life, and we can all have one.
Yeah.
And we can all have three different opinions, and it's fine. And then there's facts, isn't there? So if we're arguing over facts, then two of us are wrong.
Yeah.
If we're arguing over opinion, that's fine. That's just that's the fun of this, isn't it?
Right, but he viewed his opinions as facts.
Yeah.
And this is going to factor in later. How much do you value like a guy going and winning other things? Because Mansell left. And,
Unbelievable. Well, you went to America and won IndyCar, almost won the 500.
Yeah.
The guy is a he's an unripped Superman.
Yeah.
If he was putting on a super cape,
Yeah.
it would be a bit lumpy.
Yeah.
So
He's Superman with a dad bod.
yeah, exactly. But natural talent and doggedness, and he drove for Ferrari for God's sake as well, and walked away from them. He just had absolute relief. So it does make it difficult to call between the two. But I've got to acknowledge that they were teammates, and Mansell only managed a couple of races alongside Hakkinen, maybe at the wrong point in his career, the car didn't fit and all that sort of stuff. Right. But Mika's a guy that out-qualified Ayrton in his first ever race.
And not to linger on this, because I think
With
it's relevant
McLaren,
on Mansell, but because I think it's relevant to what we are currently experiencing, is like, they say when you get the number 2 label, it's like forever.
Yeah.
And Mansell got
Tell
hit
me
with the
about
number 2. Yeah. But he was able to escape that, the number 2 label.
Yeah, Frank Williams believed in him. Colin Chapman believed in him. I'm sure there was other notable people to go. I think Enzo was still alive when he signed to Ferrari. So Enzo Ferrari believed in him. So Mansell, it's so unfair to have them both in the same category. But hopefully I've explained my reasoning in sort of natural speed.
Very well. Okay, let's move on to the next. We got Nico Rosberg versus Mario Andretti. Next, Ayrton Senna versus Emerson Fittipaldi. Okay, so this is done.
But Fittipaldi, unbelievable driver as well. What he achieved in
How can I
Formula
brake
1, what he
hard
achieved
enough?
in America. Very nice human being. So full respect to Emerson.
And quite the lineage.
He's been given a fucking deal a couple of times.
I
I'd say
know,
that.
well, and quite the lineage. I mean, there's racing.
And the other thing about Fittipaldi, and you could say that about Prost as well, and a lot of these great drivers, is they knew when to move. They knew which, like Fittipaldi, he was with Ronnie Peterson. He was like, I don't know about this. Let me go to McLaren at just the right time. So I think it's almost like an actor, like picking your project. There's picking. That was something I noticed.
Man, this is a great board. There's some unbelievable athletes and business people and human beings on this list, because that, when it comes down to my opinion or your opinion of this, it's going to be a little bit the interaction we've had with those individuals or what we've seen them do, and not all of these drivers have obviously met. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
Sure. All right, let's go to the top here. We've got Lewis Hamilton versus Jody Scheckter.
But you've got to say Hamilton, of course, because of his championship. But Jody, again, out of that kind of Alan Jones, Nigel Mansell, just this is the way I do it. You would not want to argue.
Let's go.
They were just, they were like.
Are you kidding?
Sort of guys
104.4 is
front
crazy.
line.
Right, of course. Okay, then we got these two heavyweights here of the modern and the old school. We got Fernando Alonso and Alberto Ascari.
Well, I never met Scotty, but God, what a name! What a name that will forever be celebrated because of Honda and the Scottish game. I've got to go with Fernando because he's 44 years old. He seems forever young. He's still pumping it out. And he kind of flies under the radar in many ways. Doesn't get involved in. He is controversial. In every team he's ever left, he's scoring away for it. He's scoring it and throwing it in. But it's because of an absolute belief. And I think, not to be disrespectful to
I'm not able to do it.
the challenge, but I think there's an element of
Napoleonic.
which
See that?
just sees him not taking over an answer and not lying down. So I've got massive respect for what he's achieved and his longevity.
How long do you think he's going to stay in F1?
I think that will be dictated by next year's car. I think if next year's car will be a new Honda car, which if Honda do a good job, because I think it will be dominated by engines initially, but if Honda deliver and Adrian, of course, it takes time to sort of influence change, but he's joined with Aston with a new facility, and they've had a time to invest before he joined. Then we could be here next year going, oh, who would have known? Lance Stroll has won 10 races and he's leading the World Championship.
L'chaim. Okay, let's go down to our next battle here. We've got Alain Prost versus James Hunt.
For professionalism, and Prost was kind of my favourite driver when I was a young guy growing up. I always really admired how smooth he was. When I was young in karting, I didn't fully appreciate the advantage he had for being 45 kilograms wet through. He and the weight of the driver combined with the car, I think only came in like 90 or 91, something like that. Right. So he had a massive, like when he was up against Mansell at Ferrari, was that 90? He had a big advantage with being small, and he would negotiate with the team because 10 kilograms is 0.3 of a second, pretty much on every track. It might be slightly less in Monaco, it might be a bit more in Spa, but let's call it 0.3. So if he was 20 kilos lighter than his teammate before the driver was included in the weight, without trying, he had half a second.
Wow.
So he would go to the teams and go, well, how much would you spend to gain half a second performance? And they would go, 2 million, 3 million. You go, well, I'll split the difference, pay me 1.5, and I'll come and join. In addition to what you offered me, because you don't need to develop the car, I'm pocket sized, and I'm going to be able to give you that performance. So,
he goes, hold on, let me take a dump, and then my price goes up.
Actually, I don't know if anyone in the room could just Google what year the driver weight was brought into play as an overall package, because that would help us understand. Everything he did before that was, I'm small and I have an advantage. everything he did after that, like winning the last title in a Williams, was a
Right.
genuine thing, because Damon Hill would have been 80 kilos, Alain would have been 60,
Right.
and the 20 would have been ballasted on the car.
And Mansell called him Machiavellian at Ferrari, and then he hated it working with him so much that when he showed back up at Williams after winning the title, Mansell's like, I'm out again. I can't I can't have this guy as a teammate again.
But there was a point going back to the late 80s, early 90s, when the driver just was not included in the dry weight of the car.
Right.
That nowadays, the driver, that's why he weighs as soon as he gets out of the car, because
Right.
then they scrutiny the car and add the driver's weight, and they go, you've got to
See,
be
I
above.
kind of wish it was like that now, because Yuki Tsunoda would be like a 5-time world champion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. he would have a massive advantage.
And I know that you struggled with that, and because you're a big guy. I know that like that was like a big struggle for you. Kind of just like the we were talking with Yuki a couple days ago, and he was like, you can kind of eat whatever he wants, because he's so small that he doesn't have to worry about that. Whereas like Max, who's like 6 feet tall, like he has to be eating carrots and celery and Yuki's,
he does.
stuff
Well,
in his
Max
face.
relaxes into the winter, and then he loses weight in the new year to go racing again. He's below his natural body weight.
Right.
I'm a full 10 kilos heavier than when I was racing. There's the element of aging in that. But there's also, I was below what my weight should be for my size, but I needed to be competitive.
Okay, great, done.
It's kind of fun, but you do feel a bit guilty leaving out some great names. But I think so far there wouldn't be many people who disagree with the kind of where we're going. Someone that maybe was around, like I'm sure. Well, actually, I'm not
Nico
sure. I was
might
gonna
have
say-
What am I
words
doing? Yeah, you see
Yeah,
that?
but
got
he
words for
took
everybody.
me out of my last race in 2008.
Little
Ben
bit,
finally
a
said
little bit
Ben.
of small payback. Okay, we're going to the bottom here now. It's going to be the end of round one. We got Sebastian Vettel versus. We're going to let you pick the villain. Jacques or Gilles?
Well, Gilles is revered, isn't he, as just absolutely on edge, kind of. He's the sort of extreme racing driver. So if he wasn't a racing driver, he'd definitely do extreme sport. He'd be like jumping off the bridge and just working out how to put the parachute on the way down.
Yeah,
You know, he'd be that Travis Pastrana type guy out of an aircraft. So as much as
5.9.
I do understand that passion for Gilles, Jack won the Indy 500, he won the IndyCar Championship, and he won the Formula One World Championship. And I think that in many ways, because of his personality, then he isn't as celebrated as he should be. And I say that as a friend of Jacques and someone that I've spent a lot of time with him. But because he was a bit indifferent, maybe because he didn't have that father figure in his life later in his life, he was the sort of classic guy where doing a contract, he wanted to do no appearances, no partner appearances, no media, and that's fine. It's not the best part of being a Grand Prix driver, but being a professional sports person is doing all of those things.
Right.
So you are obliged to do the FIA media events. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But going to the partner events and sponsor events, they're paying your salary. They're developing a team.
Right.
And I think that Jack, if he was here or he's listening to this, would take it on the chin that he probably was a little bit, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not, because it kind of, it sets a tone for the rest of the team of, well, I'm not doing that, but I don't enjoy it. A team does whatever's necessary to win. And that
Why
means
can't I-
all hands on deck, and that's not my job. Well, you know what? In a team,
Yeah.
it's all our jobs to do whatever's necessary to get the job done. So,
Right.
so
Okay. Now we got Vettel
I go
versus
with
Jacques.
I go with Jacques, and because of his championship achievements, and as much as Jules is obviously a revered name in the sport. He was wild, and therefore, it's probably not a big surprise that he's not on there as a multiple champion.
Right. Okay, but Villeneuve versus Vettel.
Oh shit! Sorry, I wasn't reading. Okay. Look, you've got to go with Seb because what he achieved, 4 back world championships, professional, did his job.
Yeah.
I've got a bigger respect for that.
Right.
So yeah,
And let's not forget the iconic clip of you calling for Vettel's championship.
no one believed it, but
No one believed
I
it, but
felt
you
it in my
you,
water. Yeah.
you were out on a limb.
Yeah.
Everyone laughed at you.
Yeah.
And look who's laughing now. Vettel moves on. Next, you got Piquet versus Brabham.
That is actually quite a tough one because Jack Brabham built his own cars.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of Bruce McLaren-esque. It's of another era. And PK, 3 world championships.
We've got 2 3-time world champions here.
Yeah.
I know it's tough.
So I think that why Brabham should edge this is because he was an owner-operator. And that must have been... It was just of that era where you could go, let's just fettle it together and see if it works.
But every great driver tried to start except him.
Yeah, no, so we go with Brabham, but a huge amount of respect for what PK is. He probably stayed around a bit longer. His Lotus time was not a great time, but I love when he was at Benetton and when he won the race in Montreal, he, in the press conference, said, "I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Nelson Piquet," because he'd been so long since he won a race, so long since he'd been in a top 3. So he kind of looked like he was paydaying towards the end of his career. But I think there was
what's wrong with me.
Manson switched off coming out of the Montreal, and then Piquet came to one. So it's a tough one, but we'll go with Brabham.
And then bottom of this list at the end of round 1. Verstappen over Damon Hill doesn't even have to think.
But Damon is, again, one of the great underrated champions. He won 20-odd Grand Prix. Very short career.
Came in so late.
Came in late.
28-year-old man or something.
I know, no karting experience. Damon is... When he beat Schumacher in the wet in Suzuka, it was an outer body experience.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. So, and I watched his documentary recently and really enjoyed it because it shows just how much kind of trauma there was relating to his father's passing, and what the effect that had on the family, and the determination that he's had to achieve. You know, he deserves to be higher up, but look, you've got to recognise how great. Tough draw.
Okay, round 1 is done. We've got Schumacher, Button, Lauda, Stewart, who's one of your write-ins, Clark, another one of your write-ins, Hakkinen, Andretti, Senna, Alonso, Hamilton, Prost, Graham Hill, another one of your guys, Fangio, another one of your write-ins, Vettel, Brabham, and Verstappen. What's up, Vankas? As you know, we have teamed up with BetMGM this season. We will be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we have a special offer for our listeners.
With Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
We're going to start round 2 on the top left here. Schumacher over Button. I have to ask you this one question. I believe when I read Button's biography, he was talking about, it's like you talk about the hard work of Button, but also he was a party boy. And I feel like you were a hard worker and a party boy as well. And he told some story, I believe, where you guys were on some yacht and you guys went skinny dipping. When he was like in the middle of like a contract thing, and you were like, "We're jumping in."
We're on my boat, and we left Monaco, heading to Corsica, and I think it's about 60 nautical miles. So however long that took us, and however many drinks that took us, and then we arrived in the port, and it was the summer, and there was a lot of people around, fans, and Formula One and what have you.
I'm just not able to break hard
I
enough.
decided we should give them a show, so I'm like getting my clothes off and saying, right, let's get out in the back of the boat. So it wasn't skinny dipping; it was in the harbour. I was going to like just get naked and and what have you. And Jensen's rugby tackling me to the floor in the salon of my boat to stop me, and he's saying to the crew, close the curtains, and I'm trying to get my pants off to get out there and show Corsica what jock cock looks like. But, anyway, I never managed, but there you go. It was all good fun.
Perfect. He talked a little bit about like kind of you were from like almost at the end of an era where like that party boy was kind of like really the party culture was there, whereas I feel like when Button got in, it was like starting to be like the internet and it was like a kind of changing of the thing. How have you watched the kind of behind the scenes culture of Formula One change from your era to now?
Yeah, I think that there is no sort of private spaces anymore where going to a bar or a club was a private space.
Right.
The paparazzi would only operate outside those venues, not inside those venues. So that has all changed now. And even I see in Monaco, I've been there for 30 years, and on my socials, I'll know if Fernando's been driving with Valkyrie or if George has been out, because everyone's up there in Casino Square. And I get it, and it's part of the world we live in today. But that was kind of the one last safe place to just be, where no one was sort of posting you're at home,
Right.
And you're driving around. Which look,
How have you watched the kind of behind the scenes culture of Formula One change from your era to now?
Yeah, I think that there is no sort of private spaces anymore, where going to a bar or a club was a private space.
Right.
The paparazzi would only operate outside those venues, not inside those venues. So that has all changed now. And even I see in Monaco, I've been there for 30 years. And on my socials, I'll know if Fernando's been driving his Valkyrie or if George has been out, and because everyone's up there in Casino Square. And I get it, and it's part of the world we live in today. But that was kind of the one last safe place to just be, where no one was sort of posting you're at home, and they're driving around, which look, it's boo-hoo for the multi-millionaire racing drivers that somebody knows who they are and likes them and wants to take videos, so you just got to move it back.
Okay, next we got Lauda versus Jackie Stewart.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jackie because of, although they were not so far apart in their eras, Jackie retired 73. I'm not sure what year the first year was about, maybe 74 or something? Or,
around that
yeah,
time.
right at the beginning.
Baton-
I think 76 he won the...
I can't do it. Like, for some reason, I've lost my
He ran
brakes.
for like a year or two, and
Yeah.
then he went to Ferrari.
Yeah, but I just think that Jackie of that era, 69, 71, 73 world champion, and all of the other things he did in terms of campaigning for safety, and he started a Grand Prix team and won a couple of races and then sold it to Ford. So I used to joke with his son Paul that instead of having a little green arrow in their homes pointing to Mecca, they had a little green arrow pointing to Detroit, because Ford helped them set the team up. And then they sold it to Ford, so it was like a double win. So yeah, I've got to go with Jackie on that.
Okay, moving down. We got Jim Clark versus Mika Hakkinen.
Well, it would be easy for me to go with Mika, given that we were teammates for 7 years, and up until recently, that was the longest relationship I'd ever had. But
Hey, congratulations for beating the mark.
but there's something about the stories of Jim and the fact that Jackie calls him out as one of the greatest drivers he ever competed against, which must carry some weight. So I feel a bit guilty to see Clark, because I never actually saw him race, but he's still spoken about by more learned historians than I as someone that could jump in a touring car, could jump in an F2 car. Sadly, he died in an F2 car in Hockenheim, a rally car. So it seems, I'd say that Mika's done the Arctic Rally, so he's a bit of an all-rounder as well. But maybe it's one of those Scottish pool, but I'm going to go with Jim.
Also, given the fact that Colin Chapman, Jim Clark to him was
Yeah.
the
He's
greatest
sort of saying
designer
that,
of the era to recognize him. I'm curious. Before we get off Mika, you were teammates with him at McLaren for so long. You're watching teammates at McLaren currently. I'm just this is going to come out after the season's done, but just kind of curious of your thoughts. McLaren is the eras of McLaren having drivers going against each other, and kind of what are your just kind of quick impressions of this year, how they've handled it? Is there anything that is there one thing that you would do differently? There's been so much discourse about it.
Yeah, I think it's credit to McLaren that they've had these inter-team battles over the decades, because they have an attitude of let's get the two best drivers. At Ferrari, there was definitely, under the Schumacher era, and I know because I was offered a contract that said I would be number 2 to Schumacher. Now, aimed with everything we know now, I naturally would have been number 2 to Schumacher, but it was impossible for me to sign a contract that committed that. Eddie Irvine was happy to do that, Rubens and Massa. They had a lot of success into the Ferrari drivers. But I think that McLaren in Cross Senna and all of the other big battles they've had between teammates, is because they genuinely just want the best drivers and then try and manage them somehow. The only criticism I would have is that I don't like when the engineer, because that bond between the driver and the engineer has to be absolute. I'd liken it to you guys are in the trenches together and someone blows the whistle back in the day to go out and fight the enemy. You've got to know that you're both going at the same time. You know, you're not hiding behind you, and you're not hiding behind, you're there shoulder to shoulder. So that relationship between driver and engineer has to be unbreakable, that bond. So I think that when we do give move over, don't race type instructions, that should come from the team principal or the sporting director. It should not come from the race engineer. The driver should absolutely believe that his engineer, it would say, that's not my job. My job is to get my driver winning, and I will only give instructions that can help that.
Right.
But I'm a professional, and therefore, if there's an instruction which is going to get my driver to hold position, that has to come from someone else in the team.
Right.
Does
Although
that
that,
happen with you when you were told to move over?
yeah, it was Dave Ryan that told me rather than my engineer. Dave Ryan was the team manager. So I always believed in my engineers that they would do everything to get the advantage my way.
It's interesting. That's what felt so kind of like uncomfortable to listen to. Like given last year when you know Lando, I think in Hungary, right? Like he had to move over for him, and like, he was like emotionally blackmailing him. It felt like you're not this guy, Lando. If you're a good guy, remember you're a good guy. And it was like they have such an intimate relationship that has to happen. And felt we all kind of felt that in our core. But that's a great way of putting it.
You might not have signed a number 2 contract at the time, but like you talked about later, that Dennis actually admitted that he favored, like almost like a deathbed admission. I actually favored Hakkinen because of his injury, and I felt like a sort of emotional connection with him. So like you might have gotten the same equipment, but did you like there's a lot of talk about Oscar, Zach favors Lando deep down, and maybe. Can you speak about how it feels emotionally, maybe when you feel a tide turning against you, and do you see any of that happening at McLaren now, or you think that that's BS? Or if you do see it, like, can you speak about like how it feels to maybe like you losing the team emotionally? I think being a true driver, maybe not in equipment, but in spirit.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? And of course, the immediate response from anyone at McLaren would be that that's not the case. Yeah, and that's absolutely fine. I get that, and they genuinely not just want to close the conversation down, but they may genuinely believe that. But that said, it must. I only have one son, but if you've got 2 kids, you must kind of be slightly closer to one than the other. You've got to be because we're all different.
Yeah.
I'm the middle of 3, and my brother's very different to me, and my sister, who's no longer with us sadly, but she had a different personality as well. So I think that the fact that Lando he's doing his 150th Grand Prix with the team as we speak here in Vegas, so that he knows the team more. And if relationships didn't build over time and didn't matter, then we wouldn't have the word relationship. It is what it is. So I believe that they're giving equal opportunity in terms of machinery. I truly believe in the part, and I think that all credit to Zach and Andrea Stella and all of the team and guys that I work with, Rob Marshall and David O'Day and Peter Jomo, and they've built this winning culture again, and it's beautiful to observe. But Oscar's younger. I think Mark Webber in his corner has helped bridge some of those gaps, and he's picked up where he was lacking last year. He was lacking qualifying. He's picked that up. And up until Baku, he was looking at momentum, and flawless momentum with him. Since Baku, the wheels have come off the wagon, and it's like a champion boxer who's taking a punch, and he's still up, but he's struggling to sort of find, to get back into the round. So the last 3 Grand Prix, as we speak, are going to be vitally important. It feels now, with the gap in points, that unless the reliability of crashes, it just feels that experience and inner peace and everything is just flowing with Lando. And it's very difficult to go, he doesn't deserve to win the championship. Up until Baku, it was very difficult to say that Oscar didn't deserve to win the championship. But when we're analysing this after the year, if it is the case that Lando wins, and let's say he finishes in front of Oscar in the last 3 races, the question will be what happened in Baku, and that's the point at which, if Oscar loses the championship, that's the point at which he lost the championship.
Okay, let's move on to the next matchup here. We've got Mario Andretti versus Ayrton Senna.
Well, it's got to be Ayrton, hasn't it? So get back into the round. So the last 3 Grand Prix, as we speak, are going to be vitally important. It feels now, with the gap in points, that unless the reliability or crashes, it just feels that experience and inner peace and everything is just flowing with Lando. And very difficult to go, he doesn't deserve to win the championship. Up until Baku, it would be very difficult to say that Oscar didn't deserve to win the championship. Yeah. But when we're analysing this after the year, if it is the case that Lando wins, and let's say he finishes in front of Oscar in the last 3 races, the question will be what happened in Baku, and that's the point at which Oscar loses the championship. That's the point at which he lost the championship.
Okay, let's move on to the next matchup here. We've got Mario Andretti versus Ayrton Senna.
Well, it's got to be Ayrton, hasn't it? So Andretti, a great Formula 1 and IndyCar champion, and just a legend of the sport. But I think he would recognise Senna's brilliance.
Funny, we did this with Jacques Villeneuve, and Andretti won the whole thing.
Okay, interesting.
But he was shocked by it. He was like, I can't believe I just said that. Andretti. But I think he saw maybe a bit of himself in Andretti in some way. But I think we're with you in that way. Yeah. Senna over Andretti.
Go.
Okay, top right corner. They were teammates once. It all worked out beautifully. We were just talking about McLaren. We've got Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, well, you've got to go Hamilton because he matched Alonso in his first year, and Alonso was already a champion. So the speed and future winningness of Hamilton was declared early doors. And Alonso at his peak, and Hamilton, at his peak, been toe to toe, they were matched on that time. But I think what did you call it again? The height thing, the Napoleon complex has saw Fernando pull the pin on that grenade on a few occasions.
Better at managing his career.
Yeah, definitely.
And not to mention, Hamilton coming in as a rookie, and Alonso having had years and coming off of 2 championships.
Really
that was just what an unbelievable rookie season. Okay, next we've got Prost versus one of your write-ins, Graham.
2 multiple champions. Graham Hill sort of being synonymous with Monte Carlo.
I'm so bad.
Times. Mr. Monaco. Why I picked him in the before coming on the podcast was just again his sort of endurance in the sport. He built his own team that didn't work out, sadly, and then ultimately, his death with the longest of his employees on the aircraft. But I have to go with Prost as someone that I can relate more to. I was his test driver. He was then recognised test driver at McLaren, bizarrely, for a year before he started his own team. And so therefore that's why Prost was winning. I never met Graham Hill, but when you watch footage of Graham, it was a wonderful era. It was that kind of Cary Grant era. The drivers would always wear suits and ties to fly.
Yeah,
it was a different, now, whatever, hoodies and God knows what else. But it was an elegant time with his moustache and his really sense of Britishness. If this was his style and substance discussion, he'd be right there.
He was like Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
Now, what was it like getting technical feedback from Alan Prost?
Yeah, really cool, actually, because when I was his test driver, I remember being in the garage in Imola, it would have been 93, and I'm looking over and Alan's in the other Williams, and I'm going, this is as good as my life's ever going to get. The driver I admire, and I'm sharing what the car's doing, and he's talking to me just peer to peer rather than rookie to his multiple championships. He'd go out, do one-time lap, come in, get out of the car, drink an espresso, talk for half an hour, get back in the car, go out, do one-time lap. He did very few laps because I think he recognised the risk in testing. We used to do most of the crashing testing to think he'd fail in testing. So he was just very calculated in that respect, but great professional. And when he came to McLaren in '96 as a sort of advisor, test driver, he's also a little conniving because he knew, I guess, that he had the chance to start Prost Grand Prix, and what he was doing was getting a ringside seat inside McLaren for a year, discovering what it took to run a team, and then he started going to. So I suspect Ron then was a bit pissed off with him because he wouldn't have known that. So
lots of this did not like much about. Okay, we've done. Hamilton moves on. So does Prost. Okay, final part of the second round. We've got Sebastian Vettel versus Juan Manuel Fangio.
Again, impossible to kind of
Completely different eras.
compare different eras, but if
That's that.
what I understand,
I know that.
was he a 4-time or 5-time world champion?
I think he won five.
More different teams. Ferrari, Maserati, Mercedes. Yeah.
Just wherever he won, he was the X factor.
Yeah, and I think that given the era he raced and that he survived it and what he achieved, you've got to go with Fangio. Vettel's got to go with Fangio. So, yeah, there you go, Fangio.
But I want to speak to, because a lot of people talk about number of championships, but I want to talk about like winning in different eras, winning on different teams. Like, how do you value that?
I think the era that he raced, it was a non-aerodynamic era. It was pure horsepower and a bit of vehicle dynamics, mechanical grip. And therefore, although he was different teams, the cars were if you look at the first cars that I guess even Jackie Stewart was driving, they didn't downforce as such. They were just big Formula 4 1600, but with a bit more power. A modern GT4 would be, a Formula 4 car would be quicker than probably a Formula 1 car. So it's very, it's a supercharged model of Formula 1 in the 70s when the aerodynamics came along.
Okay, moving on to Jack Brabham versus Max Verstappen. Okay, done. Gambia moves on. So does Verstappen. You're in the Elite Eight here. We've got Schumacher, Stewart, Clark, Senna, Hamilton, Prost, Fangio, and Verstappen. Going up to the top left into our final four, Schumacher or Jackie Stewart.
You got to go Schumacher because he defined an era, 7-time world champion. Still an element of danger in the sport around his career, as we know, but he was, I think, the next generation of modern professionals. Jackie professionalized the sport in the 60s and 70s, but I think Schumacher came with a Germanic, athletic, metronome kind of approach to working with his team and the need he had to win, probably based on his background as well, and relatively humble background, and his absolute inability to ever accept any blame
With qualifying finished,
made him a bit of a machine. And I think that if you put best of Stewart against best of Schumacher, it just feels that Schumacher would put sugar in his fuel tank or do whatever is necessary to beat him. So we'll go with Schumacher.
Can you speak a little bit about the Stewart having changed the game? It changed Formula One in the safety with regards to safety. Can you just speak a little bit about like his impact?
Yeah, there is no question that Jackie had the self-confidence of that era to speak out about. He was burying friends, he was going to funerals, and yes, they were gladiatorial racers, they understood the dangers that were involved in the sport, but he recognised it was unacceptable, some of the risks that were being taken, and that took balls that clearly would be out of proportion to his height. Yeah, I think that's the thing that really Jackie wasn't just arrive and drive. He was, Grand Prix Drivers Association. He professionalized that era.
Right. Okay, moving on to Clark versus Senna.
You got to go Senna because
with the race minutes away from starting, here's
again,
what today's grid
armed
rundown.
with the knowledge and information of the speed of the cars, Clark was still of that era where jumping in a touring car and jumping in a Formula 1 car probably weren't vastly different, because the Formula 1 car, although lighter and quicker, didn't have downforce, the ones that he raced. Right. So he probably...
Well, he was like in the very beginning of the downforce, when they were first figuring it out with Chapman. Yeah.
So when we think of Grand Prix cars now, we think of low-flying aircraft, and Senna was in that era of ground effect and super fast cars.
Okay, moving on to our next one, Hamilton versus Prost.
Hamilton on the basis of he came in with a big impact in his first year. Obviously, Alonso didn't potentially win some of these races because of the weight advantage, which I think Prost probably did. And fairly uncontroversial career Hamilton's had. You know, I can really think of, there was a kind of lie gate in Malaysia one year where he was maybe economical with the what actually happened out on track, and Dave Ryan, the team manager, actually left the team taking the kind of bullet for that. But put that down to youthful, let's say, encouragement, at least probably from Ron, and coming together with Matt Silverstone. That's fair enough. I'm not lifting because
I don't
the
want to
angle
restart
and the
like
nature of that corner,
Right.
one outcome, which was contact.
Right.
But other than that, he's been incredibly clean in his career. He's obviously off track, changed so many things and perceptions, and you've got to admire that and have full respect for his achievements.
Okay, next, Fangio versus Verstappen.
But you got to go with Verstappen because he's moved the sport on. Schumacher and Hamilton had established what being a Grand Prix driver is, and Verstappen's moved that again further. And to me, Verstappen's got a combination of Schumacher's tenacity, Hamilton's speed, Senna's absolute belief in himself. Senna in that fantastic clash with Alan Prost in Suzuka.
Why is there
Where he said, I didn't know the corner first. And neither of them came out of the corner. He declared it.
Yeah, because that was just a clash.
And then in those days, it was just like a racing incident.
Right.
Now a driver, I'm pretty sure, would go to jail. His family would be, sent off to Siberia.
Well, we saw
Still
Verstappen.
would be if George Russell was in charge.
That's right. Okay, Verstappen moves on. So it's Hamilton.
Let's do this. No crashes.
It's not really surprising, is it, the names that we're ending up with? So.
No, I think
I thought it could be more Scottish bias.
yeah, Stewart.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna start. These are, we saw some of these guys. These battles happen on track, not as much obviously the other categories we would all up to, but Schumacher.
Man, I
Senna.
got bumped.
Oh, that's who we're picking between?
Yes.
This in terms of the championships and the machine, you would go with Schumacher, but I do believe, and as much as again I totally respect all of these guys who beyond my capabilities, I think it feels that Senna went up against teammates who didn't care what the teammate was, where it's my belief, based on what I was offered, that there was a lot of support system around Schumacher as number one. That does not take anything away from him as a driver, and actually just shows that, well, if you can negotiate it, why wouldn't you? But if I look at what drove me to want to be in Formula One, it was I wanted to race at the highest level against the best drivers that had made it or were available at that time, and find out where I ranked. So it wasn't just I want to win, I want to win. Of course, I want to win, but the whole reason of competition is to go, you and I go through the racetrack. One of us may do a better job on that day, and then it's like, oh, well done, you did a better job, or well done if I beat you. That's what competition in sport is. It's a racing respect. So with all of that little monologue, I have to really say,
Okay. Senna's in the finals. Who's going to be going against him? It's Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen. We saw this play out in 2021. Lots of people think lots of different things about whose championship that rightfully belongs to. In terms of their careers, who are you choosing?
I'm going to go with Max, and this won't surprise some people who know me and like me, and know me and dislike me. For the following reasons, I think that every generation should be better. That's what evolution is. I think that there's a crossover of generations there, and Hamilton has been incredible. But there's also a little bit of a disconnect in some ways, where, and maybe this is a personal, but this is the thing as a personal opinion. Max, I find very grounded, very. He's here. It's Max. He's present. We know when he's doing his interviews and press conferences, if he's not happy, he says it, and he's not.
Or illegal.
He's not
or
shy to
pizza.
say that, and he sort of owns his beliefs. Whether he's happy, whether he's sad. So I go with the staff because it's very difficult to separate the two in terms of Hamilton and his peak. I keep saying that because I'm not sure that he is his peak anymore. Controversial for a user like me to dare to say that, but it just feels the greats match their teammates or beat their teammates. And in the last couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, he didn't do that with George, and it doesn't feel like he's done that with Charles.
Right.
So if we put opinions to one side and we just use what are the two things that are ultimately important on the one? It's a stopwatch and it's a checkered flag. Everything else is opinion. So stopwatch gives you the qualifying position in the move. Checkered flag gives you the closer. And I
I can't do
think
it.
that
I fit myself in those two, so I wasn't supposed to be
the
there.
outright speed is maybe not there with Lewis anymore, but he's still, you've got to give him so much respect. But Max, it still feels like he's developing, it still feels like more to come, it still feels that how far can this guy go?
You're talking about the eras of like each generation should get a Max, and Max was recently on that podcast talking about sim versus karting, and that he's such a big proponent of the sim, and that kind of you're watching all these young guys who like have been on these. The tech is getting better and better and better. Do you think that like is an aspect of? I think Max really sees that as being like this is what gives me that edge, whereas like Lewis kind of came from the generation where like his sim, was like Nintendo 64 or whatever. You know what I mean? So where do you kind of like view that? I think that was very kind of.
Were you jealous of the drivers that had this? Did you wish you had a sim like video games when you were a kid?
Really, because
More complicated with
we didn't have internet when I was a kid. So I am of that generation that sent letters. I am of that generation
But just
where
to make you a better driver.
there's no question it would have enhanced my experience and my knowledge, but I think you can't ever really regret what you never had. It didn't exist in my time. I didn't choose to be born. That decision was made, by my parents. You didn't choose to be born. So we're born into the years we're born, and it's our duty as human beings to try to survive and try to do the best we can, armed with the information and armed with the tools we have. So I think that the benefit for Max is he's the son of a former Grand Prix driver who had arrived, Yorkshire racing, arrived in Formula 1 wonderfully fast, but I think physically maybe wasn't as well prepared, and he was up against Schumacher and Benetton, and it kind of didn't manifest itself in the same way as it might have done given his talent. And I think
why do they
start to right the wrongs of his own career, and he absolutely has. So credit to Yoss.
Bro, this is such a mess. Oh my god.
Sophie, Max's mother,
Who's
as an
also
ex-racer.
Who's also a karting
and
fan,
they've created this incredible athlete, this incredible racing driver with so much speed.
We got just a couple chill guys. Just two guys that are just chill on track, chill off track. We got Ayrton Senna, Max Verstappen. This is for all the marbles. Who's your GOAT?
Senna. And the reason I say that is because, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to have Max acknowledge his admiration for what Ayrton achieved in that era, and his single-minded approach. If he believed in something, he was not swayed from that. And Senna was not without controversy. Schumacher. As with Max. So on the board there, Schumacher, Hamilton, Senna, Verstappen, arguably Lewis is the least controversial on track, which should be acknowledged, of course. But having worked with Senna, having experience being in a room with people and the room falling silent because Ayrton's coming from the back door, I was standing there, and slowly but surely you felt his presence. There was something, in my opinion, and I'm not a spiritual person, he was, but that's the only time in my life where you felt the presence of someone before you saw them. And therefore, based on my personal experience there, Max is way too grounded. He's a great, of course, and will continue to do amazing things. But yes, from Senna.
So if you say Senna was the most intimidating guy you were around, he's the most unlikely.
Well, I never raced him to the course, but I tested with him, and intimidating in the ship into what he just accepted me as a test driver and very good that way. But he had an absolute, he had a presence, he had a belief. I don't know how to describe how you can feel someone being in the room, but I experienced that, and it kind of puts me in a slightly uncomfortable place because, as I say, I'm kind of an introvert kind of guy. What I see is what I can believe in.
The kids would call it more.
Yeah.
Kids would call it more. Can you speak just a little bit? I think it's a kind of beautiful thing, that you're a winner here.
Was pushed up,
You had
and I got no
daunting
warnings.
tasks.
This song awesome.
Can you just talk about kind of like, obviously you had such reverence for him, you talk about him in this way that
Oh
I
my
think a lot of
God,
people see him, but
I'm
you
so
had that front
bad.
row seat. Can you just speak a little bit about kind of what that experience was like and kind of where did that deepen your appreciation for him, having to fill those shoes? Like when you step in your dad's shoes, you're like, damn, he's really, like, was it that kind of vibe, or what was that experience?
Well, I know subsequently through Julie and Janet, who was at IMG when I first was managed by IMG and then became Ayrton's contractual manager, that Ayrton, having done a couple of nested testes with me, listening and watching and trying to figure out whether he liked what I was doing. I know that he'd spoken with Julian and he'd spoken with Frank, saying that he thought I deserved a chance to Formula 1, and therefore that certainly played a part in Frank taking the risk, I guess, and experience working with a number of drivers who've been in the Grand Prix that could have facilitated ending the season.
Literally, no, you do.
So the reason I'm sitting here is not just because of Ayrton passing, but because of his words before he passed. Because if, to come back to the opening of the broadcast, if we thought I was a rider, then I would never have seen the light of a Grand Prix track as a race driver. So yeah, working with him, just very aware of everybody and what their roles were, and wanted to know what everyone was doing and why they were there, so you could figure out whether they were on the team, because it's still the thing to get a team has everybody back, and there is no politics publicly in the team. When the great teams are winning big time, information doesn't get out until it's and the finger pointing starts and the politics starts. That's when you expose the breakdown in that team. And so he understood about how bringing the team together, and there's no accident, really successful across the teams that he raced for. And Ayrton Senna, isn't he not one that was a bit like Ferrari, and he recognised badge in automotive? Is Ayrton Senna not one of the most recognisable names, more than even Hamilton, who's obviously gone on to win many more championships with Verstappen? The fact that he still celebrates him today, it just tells you, beyond my work, tells us how special it was.
I don't want to crash.
I consider it one of the great privileges of my life that I was able to work with the drivers like Senna and Prost and Romancel for different reasons. But Senna just had an elegance and a class and a look. I would normally recognise the handsomeness of other men, but he had a handsomeness which would be very difficult not to find attractive.
Alright, I can't say back when I went to the section.
love this championship. Yeah. We went from this whole thing.
If Max could, it's unlikely, but if he does, then what it does is make him up the Apple movie script. Because why do we need a script? If that came on, it would be like.
That's right. Well, we have our winner.
Do you think there's going to be many people writing in complaining?
Always. Never not a complaint in the comment section. But I think your words were very beautiful. We appreciate.
I mean, Vilna put Andretti in. The whole world didn't explode.
Yeah. I think you're safe here. And no, your words about Senna especially were extremely powerful. And hey, if at the beginning you said that's why everyone calls me wanker. If Ayrton Senna didn't think you were a wanker, then I don't think anyone has the right to call you a wanker. But we thank you so much for being on our We're Wankers. We're a Bankers podcast. Can you honor us with we start with what's up, Bankers? Can you honor our people with goodbye, Bankers?
Goodbye, Vankers.
Yes, goodbye, Bankers. David Coulthard, legend. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Nope, I don't refuse to believe that that's my skill, especially in this circuit. Oh. Come on. No! I refuse. No! I can't. Oh. Man.
Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
Whoa, I'm playing ping pong now.
The 2025 Formula One season that we just witnessed was absolutely legendary, with an extremely tight championship fight.
But what the hell, bro?
Incredibly chaotic races, a lot of drama.
Oh, contact!
And bottling. A lot of bottling. But if you somehow were unfortunate enough to miss it, that's okay, because in this video I'll definitely recap the funniest, most interesting moments and storylines that went on over the course of the past few months, race by race.
I'm sorry, both of you are blocking me. I can't really...
Now before we start, just be aware that I'm raw dogging this, and the season had so many mind-boggling moments that I might give the mention to the 50% of what happened. But without yapping any further, let's start with... Coming off the back of 2024, where the grid was literally identical to the year before, it was quite refreshing to see 7 whole new rookies join F1 in Isaac Hadjar, Kimi Antonelli, Gabriel Bortolato, Ollie Behrman, Liam Lawson, Jack Newman, and Fernando Alonso. Now joining the F1 grid is obviously quite stressful, since driving this car is like nothing else.
That's much as a two-car apex drive.
But luckily for them, we're going to start this season in Melbourne, as Cheeto had was more difficult and is usually dry, which was exactly the case, as all 7 rookies qualified relatively well, all things considered, apart from Liam that is, as we'll get onto him later. On Sunday, however, the track felt a little disrespected. How can a qualifying session with so many rookies go by so peacefully? So in response, it completely pissed itself with what tires have to come out. If you're new to Formula 1, once these useless ass tires come out, you know shit is about to go down. And down it did, because Isaac didn't even make it to the second corner on the formation lap before smashing it into the wall, which was extremely sad. Not sad enough for this tough guy, of course, but oh well. With one rookie's soul already harvested, the race began, and 3 corners in, we already lost another one. And I think you can see where this is going, because Melbourne went after every rookie that was one of them. And by the end of the race he had already beaten all but one of them, plus Carlos Sainz managed them for Williams for good measure. But anyways, in the midfield, Ferrari were doing Ferrari things as Hamilton was enjoying his first experience with an engineer who got lobotomized. Meanwhile, Leclerc at the front, McLaren were dominating like there's no tomorrow. It's not surprising considering the sheer spanking it's going to everyone in 2024. However, as you'll find out by the end of this video, the thing with the Saturday Championship is not in fact like pace, skill, good driving, or even Lord Goatee, but rather two bubble-shaped X-Factors in Oscar Piastri and Lando. These two immediately putting their expertise to work, with Oscar fucking off into the grass, allowing a little unknown driver named Max Verstappen, who will definitely not play part in this championship due to how bad his car is, to catch Lando. But foreshadowing aside, he sadly failed to overtake because of dirty air and a lack of time to get on. But behind them, Kimi Antonelli, the only rookie survivor left, took 4th place after starting 16th in his first ever race and before he even got his driver's license. Crazy, I know. But now was the second round of the season at China. We're already about to have our first sprint weekend, during which the true extent of Red Bull's disaster class will be revealed. You see, in 2024, when the car was falling off faster than Drake after Kendrick, and everyone was focused on Lando versus Max, there was this Mexican guy named Checo Perez who was driving around like a headless chicken. Now at the time, everyone shrugged it off as and so he was ever so gingerly replaced by Liam Lawson, who as mentioned, qualified 18th and proceeded to crash in his first ever race. But of course, 5 other people did the same, and the conditions were extremely difficult, so nobody got to die. But they most definitely did now, because this man Liam dropped up mind-blowing sergeant performance by going back-to-back P20 in the qualifying sessions, all the while his teammate was fighting for pole. But of course, since he was a rookie and this was only his 13th ever race, he got slimed in favor of Tsunoda. But at least he wasn't alone, because someone else who was already in danger is Jack Doohan, who also qualified poorly and then caused a traffic jam in the final lap of the sprint. A sprint that saw Lewis Hamilton, who had just moved to Ferrari in a flabbergasting move, take his first win for the team, already signaling that they made the right decision to pay $1 gazillion more to get them involved. And then they made setup changes and completely fucking race. But anyways, McLaren as a result were in a different dimension completely. You know, Leclerc got damage that somehow made him even faster. How is that even possible? I don't know. I usually don't ask for any questions when it comes to Ferrari, neither should you. But nevertheless, despite the cursed cosmic damage, he still couldn't manage to stop Verstappen from pouring a fast one on him. Not that it really mattered, because both Ferraris along with Gasly went on to get disqualified anyway because of reclaiming. Meanwhile, further back, you consider us winning Sola just
I don't like that. I don't
this
like
weekend then left us with this championship order ahead of Suzuka, the sensational track known for insane overtakes and a load of action, which is exactly what it delivered on Friday and Saturday, as Jack Doohan forgot to close his DRS into turn 1, leading to a gargantuan shunt. Now you might see this and think that it's a skill issue, but I'm here to tell you that that's not true, because apparently he only did this because it worked on the simulator, and as you can see it works perfectly, so it's definitely his fault. In qualifying, Isaac Hadjar was receiving some crazy action from his engineer, all the while Verstappen against all odds would go by just 12,000, as everyone might have the next day. Yeah, it was one of the worst races in the past decade. We did see something interesting happen, and McLaren having some team issues with Lando and Oscar, which is especially significant after what went on in Hungary the year before. But I'm sure it's nothing important, and they'll definitely sort it out by the end of the season. But anyways, this monstrosity of a Grand Prix left us with this championship order, heading into... After that stellar performance for Max, the championship was now officially on really fair. This is because Red Bull seemingly couldn't stop it, worse after the departure of Adrian Aston Martin. What the fuck? This piece of shit. This meant that despite Verstappen's best efforts, and after a final lap overtake, he only managed to get 6th place, a position he hadn't gotten in the pace since Abu Dhabi 2018. So needless to say, the situation was quite dire. This didn't stop Max from playing his usual games though, as he reported landing on the schools after a starting opinion, pretending a 5-second penalty that ultimately led to an epic battle, with Ferrari's George Russell allowing Piastri to drive off into the sunset, get ever closer to the Drivers' Championship as we arrive at the line of oil, camels and desert, and rights violations, and the beautiful Jeddah Corniche circle, which saw Verstappen still away from Oscar again by an even smaller margin of 10,000 seconds. And remember how I said that bottling goes out the importance of the championship? Well, I wasn't joking, because Norris Derras dropped it all by himself in Q3 and started crying. Literally. But despite that blunder, the race got underway, and Max tried to follow Las Vegas 2023, but failed horrendously. But whilst that was going on, his teammate Yuki Tsunoda annihilated Gasly in his second after race to prove without a shadow of a doubt that the second Red Bull seat was in fact hers. But after showing how it's done, Oscar managed to win the race to take the lead of the Drivers' Championship, but Leclerc ended off the podium, while Lando salvaged a 4th-place finish as we're heading into Miami, Florida, the first of 3 American races, which will be hosting the second sprint of the season. Before that, we had a juicy Lego race. We then moved into sprint qualifying, which saw Jack Doohan get railed by his team on live television.
That's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. You've got to send him after me.
Meanwhile, his fellow rookie Antonelli took pole despite his much more experienced teammate being fifth. But just like Melbourne, Miami did not approve of a rookie cooking with gas, so he trained like it never had before the next day, which was the unfortunate consequence of Leclerc discombobulating his car on Reconnaissance lap. But as the sprint got underway, it immediately unraveled for Kimi after a good start. But as the track dried up, Verstappen came into the pits and destroyed his front wing to receive a 10-second penalty after an unsettled leads, which is the type of bullshit Ferrari would pull in 2022, but such is how bad Red Bull has fallen. But meanwhile, Sainz just drove into the wall completely.
That's fine.
But during all of this, a very important character was about to make their debut. Liam Al Lawson, who made a move that only the greats such as Lord Goatifi and Stroll could truly appreciate. In the main race, Verstappen dropped yet another masterclass, taking pole and taking the lead after some sketchy shenanigans. Meanwhile, Doohan was well on his way to join Mercedes. This is significant because after this atrocious weekend, Club gave him the group in favor of rookie Franco Colapinto, who totally didn't have some performance anyway. But after 2 Ferrari engines shattered themselves, the McLaren's body Q2, extending Oscar's lead over Lando. But now we arrive at the first European race of the season, and what better place to start than in Imola? It's going to be European's final race of the Formula calendar for a while, as it can usually prove why that should be the case. This is because it gave us yet another correct qualifying session, with Yuki Tsunoda opting into contract extension, smashing his car like 3 seconds after the start, which was made even worse for him because Verstappen proceeded to drop a bombshell and take second, meanwhile Franco Colapinto bent the car off at the end of Q1 in his first ever race for Alpine. In the main race, Max said, and made quite possibly the best overtake of the year. But thanks to a Ferrari power unit meeting the big man upstairs again, a virtual safety car was deployed, allowing Albon to go to the podium, but sadly failed to maintain position after getting bent over by Ferrari. We were then treated to the first on-track battle between the McLaren, with Verstappen then crossing the line to win the race after Antonelli's engine was by. But now it's that time of the year again, where we all gather around the TV to watch a 2-hour-long traffic jam of 150 million cars. Or is it? This year the FIA has had enough competition apparently, or not, since they decided to track in 2021, but I digress. They decided to make 2 pit stops mandatory instead of 1, which is obviously a much better solution than just rejecting royalty money. But regardless, the weekend got underway as we went into qualifying, Kimi Antonelli clipped the wall in Q1 while his teammate's battery system failed. But by the end, Verstappen's magic didn't hit this time and didn't did Leclerc's, but instead Lando Norris's, who put in an amazing lap. And as for the race, well, it went down about exactly as expected, with some cars spinning early, others staying out, Williams rage-baiting Russell into taking a penalty, Antonelli driving Gabi into the wall, Gasly getting freaky with Yuki's rear end for all time's sake, and the grid quietly getting lapped with 6 during all of it. All of which is exactly my idea of an exciting race. But as this abomination was over with, this was our championship order with Spain up next, where Yuki's pain and suffering went even further as he qualified dead last on pure pace, which meant he was officially no better than the terrorist who set his eyes on Alonso from the start, but had to abort the mission and go for Berry instead. The Mercedes power unit, meanwhile, was still not done torturing the drivers, as it failed again, bringing out the safety car, which gave Hannah Schmitz just enough time to choke the strategy, at a time where Max Verstappen was fuming harder than an alcoholic dad after coming back home. But what's the worst that could happen, right? Yeah, Mad Max was back in full swing, which obviously landed him a penalty, losing him an absolutely crucial 9 points, as we now head to Canada. Rolando halted qualifying and managed to recover to third, but as he tried to overtake his teammate Piastri during the final laps of the race...
The turn 1! No, he's ripped off the front wing!
Yeah, he blew it and gave all the advantage to Oscar, who maintained it from Austria, which I was recap because nothing interesting happened apart from the fact that he murdered Verstappen, who was now officially known as independent of Martinelli. But anyways, we now go to the UK at one of the greatest racetracks on the planet, where a lot of rumors came out linking Max to Mercedes, which put him in prime position to aura farm like the Cosa watch. But more importantly, Franco was already rumored to get sacked.
One.
No.
Seriously. Yeah, it's honest. It's like a contract with Alpine. You get one shot.
Now this was certainly not helped by the fact that he then just drove into the wall during qualifying, a qualifying that saw a resurgence for Max, who clinched pole by just over a tenth. During the race, the heavens opened, which as you can imagine caused chaos, especially for the rookies, with Alonso spinning off into the barrier after failing to execute Al-Qaeda's orders, Bortoleto sliding off on slicks like corners slightly considering his DMs, and Isaac Hadjar forgetting to turn because the visibility was god awful as the rain intensified, with Verstappen missing it all the way at the safety car restart. But amidst all of this madness, Hulkenberg, who previously held the record for the longest amount of races before getting a podium, managed to finish in an orgasmic P3 after starting P18 in a Sauber, and if this isn't the driver of the decade, then you can suck my balls, mate. As the summer break is approaching and Red Bull's form is still in the gutter, the management decided they had enough and sacked Christian Horner in favor of Warren Becky, which was one of the craziest news in F1 for years, especially since Christian Horner had been at the team literally since the beginning. Now the alleged reason for this is that it's a desperate attempt to keep Verstappen from signing with Merck, which seems to have worked for now as we arrive at Belgium for the first European sprint. Now this is when the cracks in Ferrari's master plan for Lewis already started showing, with him spinning off by himself in the final corner during sprint qualifying and then getting eliminated in Q1 too. Now of course, as the mentally undefeatable Sir Lewis Hamilton, he had very inspiring words to say about this. As for the sprint, well, nothing happened. I'm not even kidding. Apart from Max overtaking Oscar and Gasly retiring, everyone literally finished in the exact same position. They started it all the way down to the race, which was a great start for the weekend. The main race, however, had an ace up its sleeve in the form of rain, but the FIA by this point had had enough of the rookies thrashing their cars around and executing terrorist groups' orders. So they wanted the conditions to get better, and so they waited way too long, such that the track was half dry by the time the race started, which meant it fared exactly like the sprint, except to make matters worse, we missed half the barely existing action because the TV direction was moving to every single one of the gatherers. But hey, we at least got to see the Florinex go side by side, which is something you can't say no to. But what you can say no to if you're a Red Bull fan is Hungary, which went south for the past year.
Not even gonna get into a radio fight with the other teams, Max. We'll let the stewards do their thing.
This year was sadly no different, with Verstappen taking a season-worst P8 during qualifying. Meanwhile, Lewis couldn't get into Q3 again, even though Leclerc was literally on pole. In the race, however, let's just say that this spectacular performance didn't continue.
Incredibly frustrating. We've lost all competitiveness. You just have to listen to me. I would have found a different way of managing those issues. Now it's just undrivable. It's a miracle if we finish on the podium.
But after a close battle between the McLarens, Norris emerged the winner, with the gap between the championship a mere 9 points. Because we were now heading to Zandvoort after a month-long break, where all hell would break loose starting from qualifying, where Stroll has had a relatively normal season so far, getting the edge to go back to his natural habitat in gravel. In the main race, Verstappen leapfrogged Lando after a certified Mad Max move. Hamilton decided he had enough of driving the tractor while he hit the barrier. After the safety car restart, and Taliban was about to make his presence known as he sent Leclerc to meet his maker, giving us some iconic album covers in the process. But naturally, Alonso wasn't just gonna sit back and let this slide, so he crashed into Sainz, who somehow got the penalty instead of Lawson, after a month-long investigation that ultimately ended with the penalty getting identity. Just as we thought we were done, the Mercedes power unit struck again, except it wasn't Lando's car this time, which promoted Hadjar to an insane P3 despite the race's best attempts to find over. Alright, now let's recap real quick. By this point, the championship gap has widened to 34 points in favor of Oscar Piastri, who's only in his 3rd season in Formula 1 and just last year was a mere 2nd driver. But here he was now dominating races, hitting the gritty and gaining notion on the spot. However, this unfortunately didn't go for long going to Italy, where both Ferrari and Red Bull on track. Usually. I say that because the last part of that sentence is true. Verstappen snatching pole, even though the TV director cut away from him to show us every angle of surrounding him with an accelerated reaction. However, Ferrari on the other hand, and fair as well, but on the start, Verstappen had to get the position back, but it regained a few hours later. Meanwhile, Leclerc had a gorgeous overtake dropped on his head by Oscar, and Alonso suspension revived itself. But towards the end, something weird happened as Norris came into the box for softs, but had a slow stop which allowed his teammate to go past, only for McLaren to come on the radio and ask him to hand it back, which he did as Max crossed the line to somehow make a comeback from the dead in the title fight and wasted no time to finish the plan.
Norris and Piastri have swap places with Max.
Just because he had a slow start?
But jokes aside, this small gesture that only cost Oscar a measly 3 points would go on to be the beginning of the end for his championship. Back, a track known for its extremely tight corners, one of the longest straights in F1 with the highest top speeds ever recorded, but what it's also known for is choking.
See what happened to Lance Stroll.
We're heading into the wall!
Now this year was definitely not any different, as the qualifying session alone was more like a graveyard, with Albon hitting the wall, Hülkenberg going straight on, Colapinto smashing the barrier, Ollie Behrman destroying his suspension, Charles Leclerc being stupid, but crucially championship leader Oscar Piastri crashing on his final lap. Now mind you, whilst everyone was driving around like Prime Lord Mahavir, Max Verstappen took pole position, with Carlos Sainz of all people in P2 in a Williams. But despite all of the bloodshed, Baku was still not satisfied, as Oscar then stalled on the grid, dropping him to the back, only for one of the craziest moments of the season to take place.